Putin bad news. Even for a country like Serbia, Putin's Russia has become poisonous. Roman Dobrokhotov took to X, previously known as Twitter, after hearing on August 23 that Russian mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin was among the passengers of a private plane that had crashed in Russia, killing all those on board. After leading a brief mutiny against Russia's military leadership in June, many Russia watchers believed that Wagner chief was a dead man walking. "What a surprise," wrote the investigative journalist. In an interview with Bern, 40-year-old Dobrokhotov claimed that Vladimir Putin still sees the world through a Cold War lens, in which Moscow and Washington are on equal footing in terms of shaping global politics. Dobrokhotov co-founded The Insider in 2013, and since then he has broken stories about the activities of Kremlin-backed cyber hackers, the poisoning of former Russian military intelligence officer Sergei Skripal and his daughter, Yulia, in Britain in 2018, opposition leader Alexei Navalny and Putin critic Vladimir Kara-Murza, and the downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 over Ukraine in 2014. Dobrokhotov, who spoke at a panel on journalism in exile at the Bern Summer School for Investigative Reporting in Thessaloniki, Greece, said of Putin that all the attention of the world is attracted to him and he suddenly becomes a very important leader, after Putin's decision to launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 and his crackdown on journalists and his critics. However, he warned that Russia's strategy in the Balkans could backfire. Putin always undermines the importance of values of these people, in smaller countries, and their wish for their sovereignty and for deciding for themselves how they want to live, Dobrokhotov said to Bern. Apparently, even Serbia is aware of how very toxic Russia has become. Tighter restrictions on the media were released just before hostilities broke out. According to Dobrokhotov, the Kremlin began its suppression of Russia's free press in 2021, well before the outbreak of hostilities in Ukraine. Prior to that, Russian journalists had been able to publish articles about corruption, intelligence operations, and opposition to Putin without seriously worrying about their personal safety. According to Dobrokhotov, Putin believed that journalists were not a threat when elections were tightly regulated. Journalists pose a significant threat to the government in Turkey and other countries with free and fair elections because they can help bring about much-needed reform. As a result, journalists are under intense attack in Turkey and other authoritarian regimes. But in Russia, until 2021, we were all openly employed in the heart of Moscow. The police then stormed his home in 2021. Dobrokhotov escaped into Ukraine by sneaking through a forest at night. He claimed that Putin knew the war would be unpopular at home and that he could not afford to fight two wars at once. Putin compares Serbia to Belarus. Many countries that have had historical ties to Russia have been compelled to take a side in the conflict over Ukraine. Dobrokhotov used Montenegro, Hungary, Austria, Bulgaria, and Serbia as illustrations. After a while, they started to understand that, for them, Kremlin relations became very toxic, he told Bern. We can now gauge how deeply Russian espionage had penetrated those nations. In addition, this is on a massive scale. Many people were working for Russia, allowing them to obtain information from anyone, including the postman. When they needed something, they enlisted the help of the Austrian intelligence service to get it. Russia had a very big embassy there where most of the people were spies and they used the spies to go to many other countries, as Dobrokhotov explained. Bulgaria, for example, was traditionally a very loyal country. But because they started spying on Bulgaria and trying to influence the country's internal politics, Bulgaria naturally became enraged. They just kicked out all the spies and started looking into the extent to which Russian intelligence was influencing things. In his own words, I saw with my own eyes how Bulgaria went from a dangerous place for Russian opposition to go because it was full of Russian agencies, to a country that really investigates all Putin's activity and becomes a real ally of the West. To that end, he compared Serbia to Belarus, saying that Putin sees it as, almost like Belarus, a semi-independent country, that has refused to participate in EU sanctions against the Kremlin despite being under pressure to conform its foreign policy to that of the bloc in order to complete its membership application. But not even Belgrade supports his invasion of Ukraine. According to Dobrakotov, Serbia is still very dependent on the Kremlin. President Aleksandar Vučić wants to be somewhere in the middle, despite the fact that, as far as we know, Russia and Serbia are very well connected in their intelligence. Dobrakotov claims that many people in Serbia don't sympathize with this invasion and they would not support such a president who would be just Putin's puppet, because of Vučić's reluctance to publicly support the war. Not good for Putin, he said, but good for Russia, because the aims of Putin and Russia are different. Putin's luck seems to be running out, as he is becoming increasingly unpopular and divisive even among his allies, such as Vučić.